San Francisco's Bay is home to the most notorious former prison in the world. The treacherous swim from the rocky shores of Alcatraz was said to be deadly, making escape from the island impossible. So every year, swimmers flock to San Francisco to attempt the unimaginable. But this is not that story. This is a story about resurgence. Growing up, I was a competitive swimmer, and I was actually pretty good, but I had to stop because of the toll it was taking on my shoulders. I miss swimming, so it's time to take an Advil for my shoulders, don the swim cap, and see if I can hold my own 13 years later. So I mentioned that this is a story about resurgence. Swimming was my life growing up, in part because of a birth defect that had me fighting for my life and in emergency surgery at 3 weeks old. Since I don't remember much from that time, I decided to call my mom. Hello.
Hey.
I wanted to talk about my heart surgery, and like the story around that. Well, I guess we can start there.
Okay.
Okay, so you were born with a heart defect that obviously no one knew about. I think like these days, some of those are picked up in ultrasound. It's a type of a vascular heart ring called a double aortic arch. Sometimes people can live into childhood, even or adulthood with it. In very rare cases like yours, it's deadly. So the neonatal people, they completely missed what was going on. They just thought you were catching up from being born at about 38 weeks, which is not even preemie. But you weren't thriving. You were struggling to breathe. You had to forcibly inhale and exhale. You couldn't sleep, and no one would listen. It was finally your pediatrician. He had seen it before, and you were right at a month old. And he said, this is not right. He knew what it was. He immediately sent you over for a heart scan, and you never left. They were like, this is urgent. They put you on life flight right then, and they did surgery right away. It turned out that your airway was so constricted. In a newborn, your airway should be the size of an adult pinky, and you had a pinhole. So your trach and esophagus was completely crushed, and they told us later that they would have found it in an autopsy. And after that, it was just, you just blossomed. And you became the person you are, completely fearless and full of life, and 90 to nothing, you know.
My mom and I talked for the better part of an hour, but my biggest takeaways from our conversation were 1, I'm lucky to be here. 2, as soon as I started swimming, I was hooked. And 3, because of all the swimming I was doing as a kid, doctors told me that my heart and overall development were on track with everyone else. And as long as I was swimming, I didn't have to keep coming back for specialist appointments. The day of. It's 7:09, so we're waiting for the Waymo to take us. I'm feeling pretty good. It's not looking foggy at all, so fingers crossed.
Please make sure your seatbelt is fastened. For any questions, press the call support button to speak with a rider support agent.
So I'm not really sure if I'm like fully prepared for this as far as like what I need to bring. In one of their emails yesterday, they listed all kinds of stuff like earplugs that they recommended, and like obviously most people wear wetsuits. They also recommended some kind of oil. I think you can put like oil on your skin to help you like stay warm. I don't have any of that. I just have like my goggles and my swimsuit. So hopefully that's enough. So I'm feeling a little underprepared, but I don't know. It's kind of part of the adventure. We made our way to the dock where we met up with Coach Christina and Captain Laura, who would be guiding my swim. As we rowed over, they talked us through the logistics that go into coordinating this. They have to get permits, be in contact with the Coast Guard and police, and watch out for boat traffic during the swim. Look at the little pig. There it is.
So you'll probably see emergency is just as we're about to jump you, we'll call the Coast Guard on the radio. We also have to tell the San Francisco police that we're doing this.
Conditions are nice. This feels like a very unrealistic representation of the San Francisco Bay. We totally lucked out, and it's probably the nicest I've ever seen it out here. And suddenly, it was time to jump in. All right, here goes nothing. I got in the water and was immediately cold and nervous. This is a 2-mile open water swim in temperatures that can cause hypothermia in as little as an hour. I haven't swum in years, also I have zero experience swimming in open water. Coach Christina told me to stick my head in the water as soon as possible to help acclimate to the cold and swim more efficiently.
Put your face in and blow bubbles, it'll really help.
It took me a minute or two to get over the initial shock of the cold, but then I was able to really start going. As soon as I started picking up some momentum though, Lindsey and Coach Christina were yelling at me from the boat trying to get my attention.
Hey, Caleb!
Caleb!
Hey, Caleb! Caleb!
In a pool, you have lines in the bottom to guide you. In open water, I was zigzagging, which was zapping away both the energy and warmth I needed to make it across. Coach Christina was eventually able to get my attention and correct my course. I found that mixing in breaststroke with freestyle helped me see where I was going. In the boat, Lindsey got to talk to her about the differences between pool swimming and open water swimming.
One of the things we were talking about is that knowing how to sight and knowing how to breathe without swallowing water. There's definitely a technique to it. People have different techniques for doing it, but it's really important that you know how to do that. Get a coach to show you how to take a breath without swallowing water, and take a breath, look up and see where you're going. You don't want to have lane lines like you do in a pool. You have to be able to pay attention and swim straight, which is actually much more of a skill than you might think. How to pace yourself, really important too. You don't have a wall to hang on to rest when you need to, but even better to not tire yourself out, to know how to start and be able to finish strong. Those are the main differences. You know, there's the cold water, getting used to it. Caleb's swimming skins, which is without a wetsuit, but he has also been swimming in the bay a bit and dipped in the ocean and in Tahoe and was kind of getting himself ready for it. So he's doing well, but unless you know you have some cold tolerance, I wouldn't suggest you do it without a wetsuit.
With about a quarter done, I was in a groove. I was cold, but my muscles were burning. It was hard not to stop and stare back at Alcatraz. I'm not often one to slow down and appreciate things, but I could have stared for a long time. It was beautiful out. Clear skies after a foggy summer, the water was calm, it was golden hour, and the sun was shining across the water. I felt so grateful to be in the water, and I just wanted to swim in circles and make it last as long as possible. But then I remembered how cold I was, how murky and full of life the water was, and how the Coast Guard had to clear my swim. So I put my head down and kept going. Side note, Coach Christina was amazing. She was so encouraging, knowledgeable, and passionate. If you're watching this, thanks for all the help. I needed it. At about halfway, the waves picked up and the water became more choppy, which made it hard to breathe. It takes a surprising amount of coordination to breathe and to look where you are going. 2 or 3 times I had to stop, tread water, and fight the urge to vomit after swallowing huge mouthfuls of murky, sea lion-infested water. With about 3/4 done, I faced my next challenge. Hypothermia. My hands started to ache and became stiff. My feet went numb. I pushed hard knowing that I couldn't spend much longer in the water. Finally, I closed in on shore and pushed as hard as I could. I wanted to do butterfly the whole way in, but I only had strength for a few strokes. As I made it to shore, I felt like I could barely crawl out of the water, but I made it. I was flooded with a feeling of relief and accomplishment. Climbing back into the boat, I was mostly concerned with warming back up, but in the days after, while we packed up our apartment to leave San Francisco, I couldn't help but feel like this was the perfect way to wrap up our 2 years here. My 10-year-old self would be proud. If you're still watching this, Lindsey and I are leaving San Francisco to travel the world. If you're interested in seeing us do things like stay in Thailand's most unique accommodations, hike to Everest Base Camp, or motorcycle across Vietnam, be sure to subscribe. We start releasing those videos in February 2025. Thanks for joining us on this adventure. See you next time.